It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. All right, podcasters, let's do roll call. So feel free to say hi and introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Chad Jetner.
I'm Peter Lawrence.
I'm Brian Cofield.
And I'm Kyle Bacher. And thanks for joining us again, Brian. One of our pioneers.
Regular guest.
The originals.
Regular guest, original pioneer.
Connections. Let's talk about connections. Because we live in a hybrid world right now, at least for me. Mostly remote, partly on site, getting out there more among the people. I think connections are incredibly important. So how have you been maintaining connections during the remote period of the last couple of years? That's my first question.
You mean like with video chatting more?
Yeah, well, just your feeling of having connectedness to people, specific people, the company, just that general feeling of these are the people in my world that I work with every day or every week, or I'm friends with, or I'm forced to talk to.
Every meeting now is online for me, and every meeting that's online, I have my camera on, and that's intentional. And it does drive some people nuts to turn their cameras on, but it is surprising how many people follow it. The CEO at the company that I'm working for, and they've gone, their intent is to stay 100% remote. They'll probably have a space, but their intent is to stay remote. And, they were very clear, like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this cameras on, and we're going to do this, You don't have to have your camera on every time. I mean, obviously, if you're sitting there struggling with some sort of hangover or flu or cold or something like that, you're not required to be on camera.
I kind of feel like hangover, you should. If you're gonna play, you gotta pay. So I think you should be on camera if you're hungover.
Maybe. Chad, you were saying?
I feel seen right now.
Yes.
With the hangover comment.
No, that was not direct. That was totally not directed at you. That was just in general. And it's a thing that happens to people.
Yeah,
old people like me.
So we've had the same thing, Peter. Is that like I'm a cameras on guy, no matter what, right? Like you get this.
Yeah. I barely recognize you in person, and because without the glasses, just totally throws me.
But it is kind of interesting because when I started where I'm at right now, it was cameras off culture, right?
Yeah.
I turned mine on. My buddy Greg, also at SDG, started flipping his on, and they just slowly trickles through. Now it's weird when you don't. We think, jokingly, what are they up to? Like, what's going on over there?
I always say when I see somebody not sharing their camera, I just say, "Oh, I'm not seeing your video." I don't ask them to turn their camera on. I'm just saying I don't see your video. And if they want to turn it on at that point, or they're in a position where they can, they usually do, unless they have some.
But we always wonder out loud now, like, what circus of mysteries is hiding behind, like, they're just their avatar that pulses when they talk. I'm just, we'll wonder out loud. I don't. What do you think, Brian? Cameras on, cameras off?
Well, for those of us with hair, bad hair days are a thing.
Wow.
A double shot.
Burn.
Double shot.
There's just various reasons why. It's not like stand-ups and whatever. They're so short. Might as well just turn them on and get it over with. But sometimes when I'm on you get like a 4-hour planning meeting or something, like, okay, I guess I don't have to be on this whole time, or mostly just, following the Scrum board anyway. So
it's okay to mute your camera the same way that you'd mute your mic if you're gonna, pound on your keyboard or lean over and grab a snack or something like that. But
Can I just ask though, like video calls and this, it was kind of a novelty almost still, 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like I had worked on a team that had another team and they were remote and we'd have, cameras and blah, blah, blah. But the frequency and all of that, like absolutely was a novelty. Like
Right.
it's kind
100%.
of fun for a few months. And then, it how quickly for you did it get old?
Well, it was old from the beginning for me because the technology just wasn't there and stuff was choppy and people's home internets were bad because people didn't work from home then. It eventually got better, but I don't know. It was kind of like a curve. Bad technology gets better, good, and then you start to get tired of it a little bit. At least for me personally, I know some people who are totally happy with 100% virtual and wouldn't have to ever see anybody. For me, that's not necessarily the case. I like to, see people's faces in person, but there's a whole range of, like, I got tired of it pretty early. Some people are probably not tired of it yet.
And don't get me wrong, even though I waved to the 100% virtual, I still do things with my coworkers outside of the office that make it sort of generally acceptable. Like if I was 100% virtual, yeah, that is going to suck. But 100% virtual for the office part, but then some of the other stuff in person, I can totally live with that.
Yeah, it depends on how much human connection you get. If you want to be around people or not. Like, I don't, I'm living alone, so what I do is I make people, go to Teams. Like I could go back and forth and chat with them on Slack all day long, trying to help them troubleshoot something. But if it's more than a few, lines, a few exchanges, it's like, let's go to Teams, let's get on a Teams call, because I want, it's easier for me to help them, first of all, because it's happening in real time. I'm not waiting for them to get back from a meeting to respond. It's just I get that extra face time. And then, you know, at night I make sure I call friends and family. And so I'm feeling pretty good. I have enough meetings and one-on-ones and things like that to help stay connected. And I'm going in the office now on Wednesdays, which helps. I see people. I remember the first couple times going back and seeing people at the office was amazing. It was like I felt high when I left, just because I hadn't had that in so long. It's like, wow, I get to see people. They're right there. You get body language. You get so much more is happening face to face than can happen over a video call. And I think that's one thing we're missing: incidental conversations, overhearing things, drive-bys, not having to have everything scheduled. Trying to get people to do drive-bys. It's like, yeah, just try me on Teams. Try to start a call with me out of the blue. You don't have to Slack me first. But all that helps me kind of stay connected. Having Slack there, having Teams, having the tools to do it. Yeah.
So Kyle, I know that you're starting back Wednesdays. Chad, you're kind of sort of the podcast canary in the coal mine. And Brian, forgive me, I'm not sure of your back to work schedule, but I know that Chad's been doing it Wednesdays for a lot longer than I expected. And now ramping up, it sounds like. Did you feel more connected right away? Was it a blessing? Was it a curse? Uh-oh. He's being interrupted. There's a curse for you. The curse of being interrupted as you're sitting somewhere doing something, right?
Yeah. I think there's a benefit to this hybrid thing we got going, because So we're talking about connectedness, and when we were 5 days a week in person, I was very, very connected, and then we were 100% remote, never see anybody even after work, very disconnected, but very productive. So
Right.
yeah, and so there's like this nice balance, like I can get my heads down work in at home and be productive here, but then also also be connected when I'm in person, either after hours for happy hours or in the office. And there's also a lot of productivity, not just with heads down work, that can benefit from being in the same room with the same whiteboard. And that's like the ideating kind of collaboration where I don't know if you're drawing mock-ups, UI mock-ups, or architecting.
That's something I miss a ton of, is whiteboard sessions.
Yeah, and so while not like writing code productive, it's very productive from the IP kind of stance.
Yeah. Sorry. Somebody asked a question while I was being asked a different question.
They were just pointing out and helping us by giving some of the downsides of being in person all the time. It's that distractions are a little bit less electronic, right?
Well, it is less. There are more distractions. Yeah, we've been in the office 1 day a week at the very least for, oh gosh, I mean, it's been
half a year almost.
More than half a year. I want to say
more than half a year
before Christmas, before Thanksgiving. And what surprised me is like the number of people that wanted to do, like I want to do that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be here from this time to this time on this day, right? Whoever shows up, or if I'm just sitting there by myself, also fine, right? I'll make other friends that aren't you. That caught on really quick for us. And then we extended it to, okay, we're going to be in the office on this day, and we're going to make it a shorter day, and we're going to be at a happy hour at this place at this time. So we've got a standing happy hour now, every single Wednesdays, 4 p.m. here.
So if you need the productivity, you can stay home, but if you need, and to still get human.
Yeah, you get the best of both worlds. And so I don't even know that, some folks come into the office to be slightly more productive, right? Like Brian was getting at, right? Like it is, especially when it's requirements questions and the back and forth and all of that stuff, it's so much easier to do that stuff in person, for me, at least. And the feedback loop is so much shorter when you're in the same room with the same amount of people. There's a politeness factor that goes into Teams meetings. You don't want to interrupt people. You don't want people to not talk, right? So like people seem to have a better voice in person than they do over Teams, just because, I mean, we're all in Minnesota and we are literally the most polite people on the planet. So that.
Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate it. I think you should give yourself a round of applause.
I always do.
So, like a room breaking out in laughter, that camaraderie, you can get laughter, but it's just not the same vibe.
Yeah.
Presentations. Oh yeah, that works. That fills the gap. He showed a happy face icon for those listening, audio only. But no, that reading the room, like presentations are horrible if they're not if they're not in person. I just don't like doing them. So when we did, we have those events to connect. One of them is the big event. I didn't feel like I was getting a lot of connection during that event, but if we had been in the room together, then I would have felt an enormous sense of connection. So I think there's different things that have different weight in terms of that sense of connection. Chad, you started like when we were on lockdown or whatever.
Yeah.
Did you feel, but you had an advantage where you knew a lot of people already. Mm-hmm. But how connected did you feel to SDG as a company?
I mean, I'm not the right person to ask. It would have been great to ask a couple of the other people that started at the same time, because yeah, we did. I joined in the middle of the worst part of lockdown, right? And it wasn't as fun, but I mean, the buddies that I would hang out with anyway happened to be SDG employees, so we were still able to. I was still able to feel connected to the company because these are the people I'm going to be around anyway.
Do you know the people that started with you or near your starting time?
Yeah. Cody is one of them. But
and you don't have to name names, but I
Yeah.
mean, that was one of the huge benefits of starting in the office on the bench kind of thing, is you meet everybody whether you want to or not, right? And you sit with the people that you start with all the time.
Yeah, and that wasn't really a thing for the people that started remote. Like we had a day of orientation and a couple other things, but outside of that, there wasn't a whole lot there wasn't the reason for us to be.
They didn't make you sit on Teams for 8 hours in a row and with the people that you worked with. It just
Yeah.
I don't even think they did the regular like three calls a week that they do now.
Right.
Like there's 3 bench calls a week where people can just get together and talk about what they're doing and things like that.
So let's say you're a person who is feeling not connected today in the current climate. What would you hope for, or what would you do about that?
I hope that there are people that are staying in touch with that person. But I hope that person takes it upon themselves to initiate connections. And because sometimes the world is not going to come to you. You have to go to it.
Hmm.
And
I've actually tried to directly find those people. So like I requested through our account exec, we're at a big client. There's lots of folks that are on projects all by themselves. And I wanted to get a list of those people because our team has a standing happy hour, and I'm extending it out to anybody else, same client that wants to be and is in the neighborhood, right? And then even outside of that, when I hear about somebody that does not have a culture at their client that has that, where they do stuff or anything, invite them to the happy hour. Dan Schwee just came this week. He had a blast. I think he's going to be a regular now. But he's in that, it sounds like he's very much into that kind of thing, right? Where he's at a client. They don't really go out after work. They're not happy hour people. It's just, he's there. So I make it a point to find out who those folks are and at least extend an invite, right? Like, and maybe I could do a better job of making that a little bit more public because I only catch people that I know about. And I don't know about a lot of them. I don't know, Peter.
I was going to say, you can't organically build something like that instantaneously, right? It has to build on its own, and it'll get there eventually, right?
Yeah. My expense reports are proving that it is growing substantially.
I think that's fantastic that you've done that. And there are connection makers. There are people that start things. There's always that coordinator of events.
Yeah.
I've been in situations where you lose that person and all of a sudden everybody just kind of goes their separate ways. So,
and I was going to talk to Brian's point. Like, if you're that person that's feeling disconnected, make one connection, because with that one connection, just force yourself, whatever, go out of your way to make that, like, okay, I'm going to talk to this person via Slack at least twice a day, right? Start with impersonal, then say, hey, you got time for a call? I just want to talk to the human, and just work on it that way. I think that would be my recommendation. Kyle, you were going to say something? No.
Fine. If you're not part of a group that is deliberately making time for connections, fostering connections, maybe start one. Like Peter said, one person to begin with, and then maybe add people. If you're at a big customer where there's lots of people, you could just do the Chad model, make sure they're all included.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of communities that we have, learning communities, things like that. I would recommend taking the responsibility upon yourself to reach out and connect with people, and even to set up regular check-ins and things like that. You have your CM, but there's also a lot of other people that would be willing to chat for a half hour. I extend that invitation in when I do training for new people. It's like, hey, if you are kind of feeling out there on your own, you can always bring me up. I'd love to spend a half an hour chat with anybody. And I went out and I talked to people and said, I need a weekly check-in with you. Because there's a lot there. There's a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And they're people I like to connect with. So I had to build that though. And I don't know, I think it's a shared responsibility. I think people should try to foster connections. And I think the company should create space for connections to happen. And I think we do. But I think if you leave it all up on other people, and it's like, why aren't people connecting to me? And why am I out here all alone? I'm sorry that happened.
Right.
That I don't want that to happen. My recommendation is get on Slack, get involved on Slack where you're chatting with people, and go to learning communities and get involved in those kind of things, and just try to find people that you can connect with.
There's a point that you were brought up, Kyle, about asking your CM, which is a consultant manager at our organization, and so that's a structural connection maker that everyone has.
Ooh, connection maker.
Nice.
A lot of organizations do have that in the form of a manager of some type, a direct report. And that's someone you should be able to confide in and just say, hey, I'm not feeling very connected. Here's what my interests are. They should probably know your interests because you've talked to them a few times. And ask them, can you connect me with, maybe there's an existing, sorry, bugs. Maybe there's an existing group I can be a part of. You don't have to necessarily charge ahead Spartan style and creating your own group, although that's a great option. You should do that if you feel comfortable with it. But maybe sometimes you just want to be a part of something, and maybe there's a D&D group or something that already exists that your manager will know about, and then, hey, over here, you go say hi to them. That will build more connections for yourself, and then you can be more comfortable in forming new ones after that.
And I would, everyone has kind of that initial objection to joining a group of I'm new. And these people have been doing this for a long time. So if I try to connect, I won't be successful. I'm too new to be successful, and they won't be welcoming. And I found with what goes on at SDG, like that's just doesn't seem to be the case. We always have new people, and they're welcome to attend any of those learning community events and reach out to people. We have an open door policy. So yeah, I think there's things we're doing. I think there's things that people can do. We do have that PALS program, which is getting buddied up with a new person for 6 months. Like finding what connects you with people, I think is important. I have a buddy that I could say, you want to come over and watch movies, and I'll cook steaks, and we'll have a whole night of it. It'll be great. I'll pay for everything. I'll do all the work. I've got a really nice chair for you. I've got a giant TV. It'll be incredible. And I don't know. We'll see. And then I'll call him and I'll say, my toilet is leaking. I need a new beeswax ring. And he'll be like, I'll be right over.
That's funny.
My battery in my truck died. I needed help jumping the battery. He was there in less than 15 minutes. Like, okay, so do I break stuff so he can come fix it? Or is he a project guy? And maybe he'll help me do some projects and I can help him do some projects. So I think there's ways of, finding those shared interests. And then, if you find people that have those interests, and there's a lot of channels on Slack built around specific interests. And I think those are areas to get involved in. I felt some connection with the coffee group when I started roasting my own coffee beans. It's like, oh, now I have something to brag about.
Advertising is part of it too, and you mentioned Slack, and so there'll be these blasts on announcements and whatever, like such and such a group is doing something. Like, if you want to feel more connected, don't ignore those. Those are like for you. Maybe you're not interested in coffee and you'll join the beer one or something, but
and I've done the same thing at clients, right? Where they've got Slack or they've got Teams, and don't be so afraid to join a conversation that you didn't start, right? Like, somebody asks a question. Well, I know the answer. I will jump in. I don't know the answer. I'm going to stay a little quiet on it, depending on the channel, right? But if it's just a general channel of like, hey, anybody know how to do this? I'll take a shot at it. I'm not afraid. And maybe that's part of, years of consulting versus, starting at a new organization or something like that. But it really is easy to put yourself out there a little bit, and the reward is pretty huge.
Yeah.
So Chad, you've been in the office all week. How's that been?
I've been in a couple of different offices all week. It's my wife is uncomfortable with it. It was a bigger adjustment for her than it was for me. But yeah, I was down in Kansas for a couple of days. Now I'm back in Minneapolis, and it doesn't really feel that weird to me.
Okay.
It's just like when we all went remote, that felt weird for a little bit. It felt weird for a long time for me, right? Like,
sure,
adjusting to that. I adjusted to this a lot faster. Yeah, I think I'm just lucky. We are, we've got a really, really great team doing what we want right now, and they all want to be together.
Nice.
We're actually leaving the office today at 2 p.m. to go hang out on Leaf's patio and work the rest of the day from the patio. So like everything about this specific team somehow just made it such that everybody just wants to be around. I talked to my team on the weekend. Like, I text, I get more than a few text messages from folks, not work related, on the weekend, and that connection, that's kind of why I came to SDG in the first place. So
that's pretty magical, right? Like, that's not
pretty happy it worked out this way. Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So all of us have experienced gray hairs. Not saying anything, but there is a younger gen. So what I'm getting at is, like, 95% of my life has been a social communal setting, playground, right, school, more school, work, large percent. But I'm wondering about potentially a younger generation where not as high of a percentage has been spent, like, it's more time of their professional careers has been spent with 100% remote work. And is that maybe a difference between us and younger folks?
I can speak to it on just from what I've seen the last couple of years. It's the younger kids that want to be in almost more than the older folks. Personal experience last few years. I'm also seeing it, like, I've got young cousins that are just entering the workforce. They're at events all the time. So I don't know that I feel like what we're doing right now is what everybody kind of generally leads towards,
Sure.
it's weird not to, I think.
Well,
But I
I'm
could be
thinking back to my first job. I can't imagine starting it 100% remote. That would have just been unbelievable, because I certainly would drop by, teammates practically 8 hours a day throughout the day, just trying to, oh, okay, I'll go back to my cube and learn a little bit, but then I'm going to have about 400 more questions that I have to ask about the code base and everything else. And I can't imagine doing that remotely. And, obviously some people have had to do that, and they probably don't feel as connected as I was with my first job, because I was on a team, and we sat in the same area, and we talked about the same things, and we worked on the same product, and so there was like a whole giant built-in set of circumstances that threw us together and kept us together for that, for a long time, working on the same product.
And then just the drop by curiosity, right? Like I remember when I was starting my career, I'd walk by dudes like all the time. What is that? What did you just do there?
Right.
Like you don't get that that randomness at home.
No, it's hard to create remotely, for sure.
Especially in terms of general team like knowledge. When we were in 100%, you would just overhear people talking about the stories that they're working on, and you're a fly on the wall, and you learn a lot about them. And then next time when you have to pick it up for, I don't know, some further feature, some bug, like you would kind of know what you're doing. You wouldn't be segregated into, all right, sometimes they have a one-on-one Slack call together. I am never going to hear anything about that. They get their work done, and then it's all new to me unless I've overheard it from them, in a overhearing setting.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. I think it's going to be.
Yeah, my office was situated to where I could hear everything like people were saying on my whole side of the building. And sometimes they talk about me like, oh, he's going to do that, like work related, not like, hey, did you see that Kyle guy? What's his deal? But they would, well, when this gets fixed, we're going to, do that. And I would answer, I'd shout out, it'll be done tomorrow. Cause it's not my fault if I can hear you.
Right.
Like I'm not eavesdropping if your voice is coming through my office clearly. I'm like, that's not eavesdropping. So I'm going to go ahead and answer. Just being around other people that are being together, like walking through the hallway and seeing groups of people talking to each other. Even if you're not in those conversations, you do feel like you're part of it. You're part of something.
So were you guys headphones users back in the in-person days? If you needed to focus, you put some headphones on, and that was not only just a signal to everyone else, like, hey, he's doing some real work, but also blocking out those accidental conversations that you didn't need to be bothered by. Chad,
I was, like it's funny you say that, because I bring them with me all the time now. And I never put them in now, right? Like I used to do that constantly. I'd sit at my desk, I'd toss in headphones, I'd listen to Prince and Wilco like for as long as I needed, and then, take them out, right? Now I'm almost never. I like hearing what's going on. I like picking up the context clues that I get from the conversations around me on that, help inform how I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
That changed for me.
And it gave you information on what you might need to do that you weren't aware of, right? Like, oh, this person is talking about a feature and they've got it completely wrong, and I need to maybe have a touch base with them and talk about it a little bit more or something, that kind of thing, right?
Exactly that. Like if I hear, we kind of probably not super weird. We divide our work between front end work, back end work, integration work might be kind of an offshoot. But like when I hear requirements being talked about, I perk up and I'm like, oh, that's, yeah, I just kind of slide over. I'm like, hey guys, what's shaking?
Yeah, that button's totally not going to be red. I don't know where you guys got that from, but please stop thinking that it's going to be red, because it's not. They want yellow. They changed their mind last week. We talked about this, I swear. Brian, how about you? Headphones? No headphones?
I've never really been a headphone guy.
Just music out loud, let everybody share.
Yeah, right. The only time I had headphones was briefly when I was next to a very, very sociable person. Very nice, but I needed to do my work.
Yeah.
That actually, that's why Allison brings her headphones these days. She sits right next to me here. She'll always pop them in.
I wonder why everybody around me wore headphones, but when I'm focusing, when I got my head down, I'm in the flow state, all that, I can't hear anything happening like around me. I'm totally in the zone, but no, I never liked to wear headphones.
Oh, man.
Just didn't like the way they felt on my ears.
I've gone
I don't
through
wear
so many
watches either.
No watches. I've gone through so many different noise canceling, not noise canceling, not noise canceling so I can hear some things, but then otherwise noise canceling so I can drown it all out and just get into that zone a little bit easier, a little bit faster.
What do you listen to?
So what's the value of good connections? Why are they important?
I really got to answer Brian's question first. Anything without lyrics. That's the key.
Yes.
Why are good connections important? Because you're human, I guess, is the easiest. Like, most people were not raised by wolves, so to speak, and
we're social creatures.
Yeah, I can't even imagine just being on that deserted island for a year or whatever. Everybody knows why somebody painted a face on the volleyball, right? It's because you missed having that connection and having a conversation. And when it talks back to you, then you start worrying about yourself. But
that's when you know.
That's when you know
you're in trouble.
Yeah, you want to feel like you're part of something bigger than just yourself. At least I do when I'm working on projects. Like, I'm actually doing something for the betterment of not just myself. It's an organization, a group of people. Like, I was working on some library systems for one of my gigs, and that was cool because you got to help a lot of people. Get them reading and learning and stuff, and that felt really good. There's also on the flip side, on the organizational side, because I think it's been correlated with turnover, this connectedness.
Yeah. That's what I see it in a few different ways. It's like gravity. And if an object flies by that has greater gravity, like you lose people. If you don't have sufficient gravity, it might be pay, it might be something. The grass is greener. Something comes by and it plucks them away because you don't have the connections to keep them there. And then I see it as the value of what happens through those connections, the communication that happens. The more connected you are to something, the more familiar you are, the more you let your guard down. And there's a lot of like emotion, social awkwardness, all that kind of stuff that has a negative impact on the quality of your communication in the moment. I think connections help reduce that, so you get better communication. And connection is sort of that hive mind where it just kind of, all that communication, you get the grapevine effect. It rolls through and kind of keeps everybody on the same page and seeing things the same way. And I think that helps people kind of work in concert toward the organizational goals and things like that. So,
another point that you were making, Kyle, and I agree with, is that, a lot of the communication becomes less chatty, right? You can say, a lot with a nod or something less than that sometimes. Whereas if you're all remote, it's like, all right, I'm going to have to type out this three line paragraph just to get this across. When, if we were sitting there, I give a quick explanation, couple words, they'd see the look on my face, they'd know what we're talking about, and everybody's on the same page right away. Make it a little easier, a little bit faster.
How about you, Chad? Benefits of connections?
I don't know. I mean, it makes us stickier at clients, selfishly as consultants. The more connections we have, the more connections we make with folks at our clients. And hopefully, ideally, those are all great. But like the more connections we make, the better we do here. The easier our job gets, right? I mean, I mentioned the happy hour, and it's kind of a goof at this point that we do it every week, and we're silly about it. But also, we get an incredibly eclectic mix of people out there, right? Like folks from SDG come, folks from other projects at SDG come. Our account executive came once, and I invited one of the senior directors here, and he was sitting right across from her and didn't know it. And I'm like, well, let me introduce you to blah, right? So it does wonders for us being sticky at a client. My day-to-day is nicer because, I have those connections with folks. And I look forward to the people that I get to hang out with every day, right? Like I say, I come in Monday morning, I come in hot. I'm always like, TGIM, like, thank God it's Monday. These last 2 days were horrible. So I don't know, man. I don't, I hope monkeypox doesn't become a huge thing because I don't want to go back to being locked down. I really, really need this.
Well, and to sort of put you in a little bit of a box, Chad, you tend to lean a little bit more extrovert, right? Like you feed off of those interactions, and some of the other developer community, I would myself included, were like, introvert, don't put me in. I'll open up to a small group of people, we'll have a great time, but I don't need to go out and whoop it up or anything like that. To get energy, that like after a company meeting, I'm just like drained. I'm so empty. Like it's been fantastic to meet everybody and keep in touch, but then I'm like, oh, glad I don't have to do that tomorrow.
Yeah,
putting myself out there a little bit more.
Social batteries, they get drained pretty quickly at a big event with a lot of people that you're trying to talk to, and it's hard to be funny all night long. That wears out, and then I need to go charge my batteries and just kind of go home. I walked around, I joked around with people and spent all my energy, and it's only 6:30, and I'll be an extrovert the rest of the night.
Somebody at a different client I thought they put it well. Like when you're feeling really connected, you're able to come to work with your most authentic self, and you don't have to put on a mask. And it's easier for you to just be yourself and be your best, and that in turn makes the organization and the team do its best.
I think there's also a trust component there. Like through that connection, trust is built, and you trust them to accept you as you are, and then you can be yourself. You don't have to try to be a professional and say all the right things. You can let your hair down a little bit and just be genuine. Let that hair down.
Can I ask you? Now you moved all the way out of the cities, halfway to Canada. What's that doing for your ability to connect? Or do you just got a truck with good gas mileage?
Yeah, no, I definitely do make it into a town at least a couple times a week because I do need to charge my batteries by seeing and interacting with people. But it's also nice when I'm not interacting with people, I interact with no one anymore. There's no one out here, so
not accidentally running into anybody.
Right.
I know some people that live out that way. I'll get your address and I'll just send them by just so they can walk by your house, get a parade of people.
They get out of their car, walk by his house, walk back to the car, and then drive back to their house. Be fun.
Maybe we need to pull up all the people on the map and have a proximity map, and y'all can form some kind of regular happy hour in a centralized location. We'll meet in Elk River.
There you go.
Hey,
So
it's a
Chad,
nice-
I probably unfairly put you in a box, but do you feel like you get recharged by being around a lot of people and that kind of thing? Or I mean, you're saying TGIM, which it's not a phrase I've heard a lot.
Yeah, to a degree. I get recharged. I don't really notice it though anymore. Like I don't notice not getting, you know what I mean? Like I'm around it now so much. There's no ebb and flow. It's just
Right.
just a constant, it's a constant thing. I think um if I'm not around, coworkers, people I like to be around, like I spent a couple of weeks in Hawaii with just my wife. That was nice. I didn't feel any worse, obviously, being in Hawaii. But for me, it's such a consistent level that I don't really notice it. And I'm super habitual, so that kind of plays into it too.
Sure. I mean, yeah. And I certainly have my habitual hat that I put on all the time too. And it hangs on the habitual hook because it has to, because that's where it goes. But, you keep doing the same thing over and over, and it's nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my only habit is I put everything with my keys because I have to have my keys when I leave. That's the one thing I have to find. So if anything else has to go with me, then it's next to my keys. We got about 5 minutes left. Parting thoughts for people that are feeling disconnected.
My parting thought is make the small effort to connect to one person, your favorite person, the person that makes you feel good during a stand-up, whatever it takes. Make that one connection, start there, and then you'll feel like it'll grow faster.
And then maybe also, I mean, within your organization, there's going to be people that are obviously enjoy being connected to folks, and they're usually pretty easy to find. Make that one connection, that guy, right?
Yeah.
And you'll be included in a whole lot of things.
And say yes.
And say yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because that guy really wants to make your connection too. He's a connection guy or gal. So, yeah, absolutely. I would say if you don't have anything like that, like I mentioned before, use your manager to facilitate that first connection. That'll help.
And I would say in that first connection, in those early conversations, take it on yourself to be the interviewer and learning about that other person, instead of spending that time talking about yourself. If they ask you questions, hopefully it's an exchange, but I would say primarily try to focus on bringing them out, learning about them. And I think that's a good way to start the relationship. Because they will invariably ask you about you, I hope. Let's talk about me more. I like where this is going. Thanks for reaching out.
I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah.
All right. So next podcast, we're going to be in Brian's backyard out in Zimmerman among the trees.
With bug spray. We'll be fine.
Let's do it. Next podcast in person. We'll figure out how we're going to do it between now and then.
I'm all paid up on my bug spray guy, so we should be good.
Excellent. All right. I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks, gentlemen. I guess it's time to say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Everybody.
Bye, folks.
Goodbye. Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.